Okay, so this welcome to Vlogma Day 2. I think I'm using iMovie for the first time, and I just spent the last 20 minutes that I didn't have trying to do this a different way. So now I'm trying this, and we'll see how it goes. So I tried to take you all with me furniture shopping, but I didn't have enough storage in my phone, and I got an email from YouTube saying I was given access, and I thought that meant that I could go live. But it actually, when I posted my last video, I put links to the stuff I had mentioned, and it wouldn't let me put the HTTPS. And so I had to like verify my identity first. I was able to put the www, which is why it looks like that. Um, but then I got an email saying that my identity was verified. So I mistook that to mean my access was granted, but I still have 6 hours left before I can actually go live. And when I tried to go live on my phone, from the furniture warehouse place, it said I didn't have the ability to do mobile live. I could only do it from my computer or phone or camera. So I might order a camera this weekend. But yeah, I'm gonna give this iMovie a try and see how it goes. So today I said I was gonna. Oh, so I did go live on Instagram. I'll have that in the description box if you want to see. I went to that warehouse that had the furniture. I did buy a like a side table, and a lot of people purchase furniture that's still at the warehouse. And so the lady said she just needs everyone to pick up their furniture so they can bring in more. And so they'll come back next weekend or the weekend after, depending on the rate at which people pick up their stuff. But it was on it was priced for $80, but what happens is actually when you go up front to go pay, she will email you the invoice, and the invoice was only $53. I was so surprised. And I don't know if that was like there was a discount on everything, or it was because it was like the end of the day and I didn't ask. Um, and if I had need for another one, that would have been great. Maybe I'll put one. I don't know. I have the week to think about it. But yeah, you'll have to check out my Instagram to see the table I purchased. So anyway, I said today was going to be all about my academic background. So I want to try to keep these to 10 minutes. So yeah, hopefully I can get it all in and it doesn't feel rushed. So in high school, leading up to high school, I always wanted to be a teacher. I think you just like dream of whatever you are exposed to. That's predominantly what you think about. And I love school. I love learning, and I had really great teachers, and so it just seemed like a great thing to do. Then when I was in high school, I think I wanted a car, and also all the things I wanted to do in general. Every time I would ask my parents, they would say no. And so then I thought, well, and some of the things were just because they would say it was because I was a girl. But anyway, I started thinking more about the money aspect. And I said, you know what? Teachers don't make a lot of money. I'm going to pick a different major so that, when I have kids, that's what I was thinking at the time, uh, you know, I'll be able to do whatever we want to do. So, and it's not that money was even a problem, but for some reason that's what I was fixated on. So anyway, so then I chose computer science as a major, but someone at church said pick IT. That's where everything's going. Off. He sees squirrels literally 24/7, but he still gets worked up about every one of them. And so his birthday is actually on Tuesday, him and his siblings. And so today I spent all morning grooming him. I do all his grooming, and then I took him to this place where I can do like self wash. And so that's what we did before the furniture. And so he looks so cute. I love when he gets all trimmed and his ears come back and they're not like, uh, you know, raggedy. So anyway, I changed my major before I even graduated to IT. And then I always wanted to go to college. I always wanted to go away and travel just because that's what I saw my parents doing. And sorry. Oh, okay. Um and so I had the opportunity to participate in this like transition program. I really didn't meet the requirements. It was But someone kind of snuck me in there. It was supposed to be like I think if you, I don't know if you're supposed to be first generation college or single parents, whatever the requirements were, I didn't meet them, but I still was able to get in. And it was mostly to help like minority students transition to college. And so graduated 2 weeks later, started college. And so that my major at the so we did like an English class, like general ed. And so that fall is when I started taking the programming courses. And I remember I had this professor from Purdue, and I just thought she was so hard, and I didn't feel like she was really helpful. And I would spend like 6 hours in the lab trying to like design these programs, and I couldn't figure it out, and I couldn't go to a book and figure it out because it's kind of like, I'm gonna say it's an innate trait. And I always say I'm black and white. I like to go to the book and see the answer. And so after that first semester was over, um, and I hated it, and my grades showed that I hated it, and that I didn't put any time into it. So I went to Radford. I was deciding which, so I purchased a book that had like all these colleges in it, and I had come up with some criteria on what I would pick a school based on. So I had picked Radford and Tech because they were so well known for teaching. So even when I changed my major, I never went back and picked different schools. So it was those two schools, and I knew one person at Radford. We went to high school together, and then Radford gave me a scholarship. Plus, they had like suite bathrooms, whereas Tech had really small rooms. They had the community bath. I didn't know anyone, and they didn't give me any money, and so it was an easy decision. It was the best, one of the best decisions I've made because I met some friends and people who would be in my life forever, and of course they shaped me into, partly shaped me into who I am today. And so after that first semester, and my grades started to drop, I sat with myself and said, "Oh, what would I do if I didn't limit myself to time or money?" And I decided I was gonna go to dental school. That I wanted to go to dental school. So I went back to the advisor. They told me to pick a science. I picked, and she really, the way she described it was like, biology and chemistry are the main ones, and they're basically the same. You just sit and memorize. And so I had taken both of those in high school, and I think I just picked bio. Maybe I liked that one more, but it was more because of my experience. Because in high school, I had a black biology teacher. She was an AKA, and she had told me about her chapter and how they do debutantes. And so I was a AKA debutante in high school. And so, I'm associating all those positive memories with biology because leading up to that year, all I heard was how hard she was. And we ended up, having such a great relationship. So when it came time to pick biology or chemistry, I just picked biology for that reason. And then, so I did great in grade school with grades. Like I never struggled with that. But when I got to college, I remember we had like this meeting in the auditorium, and they were like, some of you who've done great are going to have a hard time here, and some of you who didn't do so well are going to do wonderful. And I didn't think they were talking about me, but they were. So I struggled for probably the first 2 to 3 years with figuring out my learning style. And at that same time, I have all these temptations on campus and life and being free. Um, and so I'm, trying to juggle all of that. And then, not everyone picks. Oh, there's a squirrel. There's a squirrel right here. And then it was hard because all my friends weren't science majors, and so they had their time management and flexibility wasn't the same. But I was spending time with them, so I would cram all the time. I'd be up late all the time and not really learning anything. The way I describe it is like it's all in my brain. It's like a pile of laundry on the floor, but when it comes time like for the test to find like a specific shirt or pair of pants, I couldn't find it. And um so yeah, I struggled, but I took advantage of all my resources. I started going to tutoring. I talked to my professors who were so kind and so willing to help me, and they just made me promise that I would always help other people, and that's kind of what I do today, and I've been doing ever since. And so I ended up graduating. And so one of the sad things is there were a number, like a handful of us, or black students. We had a large Ethiopian population who were bio majors. And at halfway through or at some point, people would, switch majors and go to something else. Business was a popular one. So by the end, it was me and one other girl, Mika, and uh, that had graduated from biology. And so even though I graduated, my GPA wasn't strong enough to move on to dental school, of course. I took so many Kaplan prep courses, and I never took the test because all the pre-tests I could already see I wasn't ready. And so I said, okay, let me go to grad school and try to boost up my GPA. But also, I was also wondering, what my strength was as a student, because it's like, was like grade school a phase or is the college a phase? So I went to grad school to kind of test that out. And so when I got there, I went to Tufts. And so what happened is after I graduated Radford, I went over to GW because of my mom's friend told her I should apply. I didn't meet the requirements for that either. You're supposed to have a master's and some work experience, but I didn't have it. But I applied and I got the job. It was like a supervisor of their Mount Vernon campus, so it was the science building. And so I would prep all the labs and I would hire students to help me. And there was a physics lab, which was mostly computers, and I would prep that. I would take the shuttle over to the main campus and participate in meetings. And I can't remember if I did any grading. For some reason, I knew the students' grades. Maybe that was because we were meeting and talking about it. But that's when I learned that all these schools are the same, and that really what you're paying for is to be part of like a particular network. And that no matter what school you go to, kids don't always study. They get their parents to complain to the university. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm just going to say it's not the school per se, it's the network. That's what you're really paying for. And that one student isn't better than another just because they went to one school. That's all I'm going to say about that. So anyway, so while I was working there, someone presented me the opportunity to be the supervisor of the United States Biology Olympiad, which took place, or well, it was held at George Mason. So I did that for 2 years, 2 or 3 years. And the students who participate in that, they always say, oh, these are the top biology students in the country. But really, it's the top biology students who go to a school that participates in this. And so nevertheless, really smart students. They were all going to like Harvard and Yale, all these Ivy League schools. And then quite a few of them were going to this school I never heard of, which was Tufts. So I looked into it because at the time I was trying to go to dental school, and Tufts has a really great dental school. Part of my time at Radford, I was able to do like an independent study, and I could basically do whatever I wanted. And so I did an exploration into dentistry. I shadowed over 200 hours in of a dentist. I shadowed a couple dentists. One ended up becoming my orthodontist, but the other guy who gave me the most hours was in the army, and he just let me come as much as I wanted to. And so I go to Tufts, and then I chose biomedical engineering, because what I realized is once you go to grad school, and I already see the time is past 10 minutes, when you go to grad school, I can't speak for every field, but if it's like science in particular, it's hard to come in cold if you didn't already study that as an undergrad. And so I said, well, I was kind of exhausted with biology at that point, but it was all I knew. And then there was this cool medical aspect and the engineering aspect. My dad was an engineering major, and I always said if I ever went back to school, I would just be an engineering major, have that one degree, because you can do whatever you want and never, and that's it, right? Be pretty successful with that one degree. And so I chose the biomedical engineering program. It was a graduate certificate program, and I thought it would give me an opportunity to see if I could withstand the rigor of a graduate program, not only to myself to see am I really a strong student, and also I could show these schools that I was going to apply to that I could handle the coursework. So again, I took advantage of all my resources. I had really good relationships with my professors. Took advantage of all the tutors. I made friends with my classmates, and I did really well there. They pushed me as far as I thought I could go, and then once I got there, they pushed me even further. And so I was still shadowing. At this point, I started shadowing endodontist, and so I'm living in Boston by myself. Yeah, that was my first time living by myself. And I just started to see dentistry more isolating and of a lonely profession, in the setting of also being alone. And so I just started to question if I really wanted to do that. And at the time, I was working at Children's Hospital Boston. I was a graduate research assistant for this pediatrician who was recruiting patients for, I think that was an autism study. And I had to talk to the nurses all the time to find out if patients met the criteria for this study. And so then I started to see them differently. And when I would get ready for work every day, I would watch ER, and they would always highlight the nurse. Like, for some reason, like, she was just always the center of each episode. And then one of my college roommates, her mom had called me and was telling me, because she was a nursing major, one of my roommates, and I never even thought about it. But she was talking about it, and she was saying some things that really piqued my interest. And so then I started looking into nursing, like, seriously. And I love the flexibility. Again, it's kind of that 1 degree, you can do a million things. And I always knew I wanted to get my doctorate because I always wanted to be as far to the top as I could to have fewer people tell me no. And so I looked into a doctorate program before I even picked my bachelor's program. And the only two schools that had what I wanted, which was BSN to DMP, was Duke and GW. And so I knew I was going to be at one of those. And so I picked Memphis because I was also watching a lot of Food Network, and there was a cute couple called the Neelys, and they were so in love and they were so cute. And I thought, well, if people are like that in Memphis, I want to go there. So I actually looked at a bunch of schools in Tennessee, but I ended up picking. I think I applied to more than one, but I picked University of Memphis, and best just it was so random, right? But I absolutely loved it. Another wonderful decision. Absolutely changed my life. I was so involved in the community. I tutored there, both in the community and and on the campus. I worked the whole time I was there. I had to do prereqs all over again. I did exceptionally well. It was my biggest school at that point. Um, and I took A&P was like, one of the prereqs, and then I ended up being a tutor for that course all through nursing school. So it just kept being reiterated over and over. So I took it in high school, I took it at Radford, I took it at Tufts, and then again at Memphis. And so yeah, so that was one of my jobs. I was a Zumba instructor there too. But they did a lot of tutor training, and that was really beneficial, and it was really helpful for me to be studying that. In those, like, kind of pre-nursing courses, those science classes were typically filled with a lot of people wanting to go to nursing school, and there were like 400 students in those classes in the beginning. And I had to attend lecture all over again, but it ended up being helpful for me because it made it easier for me to help students. And I would come up with quizzes, and in tutoring, and I would do, tutoring sessions. We would be at the whiteboard, and so some of those students went on to be really good friends of mine, and we're still friends to this day. And it was a wonderful time, and I was gonna stay there, but then, as I've mentioned in other videos on the internet world, that my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, so I came back home. And Georgetown, I think I looked at Georgetown and GW as far as like a job, and Georgetown had a nurse residency, and they offered to pay for travel expenses, so that was a no-brainer. Applied to that before I had interviews like in September. I was still in school. I wasn't going to graduate till December. Got the job for the neuro ICU. I wanted cardiac, but they didn't have a cardiac ICU. And so I did neuro. And then I started working, did NCLEX like in January. And then I started working in that February. And then the plan for me was the first to spend 2 years and then go back to grad school. But also the culture at Georgetown encourages you to do that. But I started getting involved in the hospital and on the practice council and diabetes champion. And I started, my, my computer like stopped. I was like, is this like the phone? Um, and so I started just having a different perspective of nursing because when you're just at the bedside, especially in those early years, it can get a little daunting, right? And so it's is it the Brenner stages of nursing, where it's like in the beginning it's this dream, and then when you hit the floor, it's kind of a little very discouraging, but then you come to a point where you find like a happy medium of like your dream fulfilled, but also the reality of healthcare, right? And taking care of people. And so being involved in the hospital gave me a bigger picture than what you just experienced at the bedside. And so originally I was going to do the PhD DNP program, but then at this point I was like, I have other things in my life that I care about and I want to invest in. So I took an extra year to decide which direction I was going to go, and I ended up picking the DNP because I thought it would make me the most versatile, and I love flexibility. And so then I applied to that. That was 6 years, and then yeah, that was last year. So I graduated in 2022, and so the year before I started traveling, always wanted to be a travel nurse. Once I found out about how much money they make and just the idea of travel, I love. And so the plan was do it for 1 year and then graduate. So I had taken halfway through the BSN to DNP program, I found out I was going to graduate with my master's. I wasn't even expecting that, like in terms of transitioning my life and getting a different job and stuff like that. And so I thought really hard about that because a lot of my coworkers had already gone on to NP school and were practicing, and they were sharing their experiences of working late, bringing work home, working on the weekend, and I already had schoolwork at night and on the weekend, and I didn't see how I was gonna be able to be successful or still enjoy it, especially after I had worked so hard to get there. And so I decided that I was gonna wait, and it was a very hard decision. I took boards right away. It was a really tough decision because we're trained to just like put all of our education and training to work immediately. Um, but I had already taken a non-traditional route, and so this really wasn't going to be any different. And I thought, okay, so let me just get involved so I can kind of have my foot in the door a little bit. And so I signed up to be the student rep for the Nurse Practitioner Association um, board. And so I did that for 2 years. And then the only reason I stopped was really because I started traveling and they have meetings in person. I was able to stay on a little bit longer because of the pandemic, because everything would end up going virtual. But once they went back to like in person meetings, I just stepped down so someone else could fulfill that responsibility. And then I also joined DMPs of Color, started working with them on their program committee. And so that allowed me to feel like I was doing MP stuff. But I still really struggled with imposter syndrome because it's like, okay, I have the education, right? And I'd have this conversation with myself. I have the degree, so technically I'm a nurse practitioner, right? I pass boards, so technically I'm a nurse practitioner, right? I'm still taking care of patients, but I wasn't doing the nurse practitioner role. So I really had imposter syndrome up until this time last year when another one of my colleagues on DMPs of Color, she was so instrumental, and I don't even know if she knows that, but I'll have to tell her, um, in helping me see that I was experiencing imposter syndrome and that I didn't need to. And she just said all the right things that helped me realize like what determines who you are, what you can call yourself. So just that conversation, then it was like once you realize it, it's like, oh yeah, I don't need to think like that, and it was gone after that. And so um, I was gonna. So then while I was in school that whole time, I started learning about real estate and business and really loving it, realizing like that's what I had been looking for this whole time. Had no clue that was a thing that was in me, like entrepreneurship and innovation. I even had my first business when I was like in middle school. It was called Kim's Cookies. And then you can ask some of my colleagues. I used to always say, like, come on, let's come up with something, let's invent something. All the time, I was like, how can we figure out how to do this? And da 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 da. And I had no idea it had a name, and that was innovation. And so I was learning about all these other things while I'm working full time in school, getting my doctorate, and trying to learn these other things and still have a life, you know? And so when it was time to graduate last year, I was like, man, if I just jump into this provider role, I still won't have time to learn these other things that can bring a lot more fulfillment to my life. And so I took another year so I could explore those things. And then it's like, well, what would I do if that conversation with myself, what would I do if I could do anything? Because basically, once I got the doctorate, my life was a blank slate again because I had worked so long on just getting to that point. So then after that, it was a blank slate. So it was a time to start really over, which I was excited about. Um, and so I said, well, so I spent the first summer looking into nutrition and integrative medicine. And then I said, well, if I could do anything, I would write. So it's like, okay, well, what are you going to write about? So then I started exploring specialties again, and I had gotten into Derm and really kind of the wellness space during the pandemic, watching videos on YouTube. Um, and I started looking into that again and just looking at the numbers on what it takes to get like education and training, and had a little scratch piece of paper and a pencil. And when I put together like how much people were charging and per hour for the skill they were helping you get, it gave me an idea because during my DMP program, I took a entrepreneurship and innovation course, and you had to like pick one problem and solve it. And so when I was on the MP board for DC, we had somebody come on and do a whole presentation on the preceptor shortage. And because I had gotten so many hours shadowing in dentistry, I really had, mastered the cold call and how to get clinical hours, who to talk to, what to say. And so while I empathize with people having a hard time getting a preceptor, I really didn't have a problem. I got all the preceptors I needed up until the end. I needed a few more. And of course, I just reached out to my professors who I had really great relationships with, and they helped me get two more. And so, um, what I always say is like, even if you go to a school where it's the student's responsibility, quote unquote, to get a preceptor, if the student can't find one, it then falls on the professor, which is what this lady who was in the meeting was presenting. So in the entrepreneurship innovation course, I addressed the preceptor problem, and I think I came up with a really great concept based on my own experiences, and so I'm kind of working on that. And so when I put these numbers together on what people were charging, I came up with a plan. So I'm working that plan. I have a 10-year plan that I came up with. I designed it on Canva. This is the second year. I need to look at that to see what I accomplished, because when I first put it together, I hadn't had the idea of starting a telederm business. And that kind of popped up out of nowhere. And so last year, this time when we had our conference, um, our founder and CEO, Dr. Danielle McCamey, was interviewed by the Elite MP. Oh, is this getting me into the Derm story? It is. And I'm supposed to do that tomorrow. So actually, you know what? Let's stop because I'm way past the 10 minutes that I wanted. Um, we'll pick up back into my Derm story tomorrow. So yeah. And I lost my natural light. Maybe tomorrow I'll try to get better and do some natural light. My mom's coming over tomorrow, because for October, for the Melanin Initiative podcast, we did a whole breast cancer series. I interviewed her for multiple episodes just so that we could really do justice to the different phases of her journey. And so the final segment is on faith and medicine. And so she's coming over tomorrow. We're going to film that. And so I don't know how long I'll be able to chat with you guys. But since I've already kind of started the Derm story, that will be helpful. So thanks for watching. I see you tomorrow. I hope this works out. I just spent 30 minutes talking.